I'm not standing up because my head will be in the roof and the roof's down here, and the main thing you want to see is this thing. So welcome me to you. Today we're pretty much just going to do a quick little rundown of my S13. I've put quite a lot of effort into this thing, along with the help of some of my close mates and some companies that I've worked with to get this end result. So before I go too far into it, let's have a quick look at the outside of the car, because I washed it and it looks quite good, and then we'll get into some details.
Why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know where we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here, ain't stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up, I'ma always win.
As a super quick rundown, we'll get into the interesting things before we get into the technical side of it. So on the front, we've got a TBO style front bar. The front quarters on the car are factory steel. I've actually made some 25 to 30 mil steel flares and welded them in. Made them look as close to factory as possible so you can't tell that they're big and bulgy. That's to fit my wheels, which we'll get into in a minute. Side skirts are super made. Rear bar is also super made. I've got Origin 55 mil rear overs. I did originally want to do steel rear guards the same as the front, but the rear quarters were a little bit cellulite. And I've also given it a few hits over the years. So the steel rear guard thing wouldn't have been very good. It would have been full of bog, and in a drift car, it's not really ideal. I didn't want to be fixing it every time I drove it. What we've done is we've reinforced underneath the over fender, giving it a steel structure. They're bulletproof. Everything on the back, you could run into it all you want, nothing's going to move. That's why the overs have lasted as well as they have. My favorite thing about this entire car is the wing. So it's a genuine 90s Boom X wing, which is actually made for S13. Same style as R32 GTR, but it's actually plastic and is made for S13. So that's by far my favorite part on the car. And then the bonnet, we've got an Origin bonnet. Whole point of that is because I love this bulge that they put up in the front of it. The bulge in the middle of it and all that, I wasn't massively a big fan of. I was going to try and replicate this out of steel, but at the time I thought I'd test fit the Origin one, and then once I put it on with the kit and everything, it pulled off quite well. So now I've come to like that quite a lot. I've collected quite a lot of 5-hole 15s over the years. They used to be quite cheap because no one wanted them, and I decided to start collecting them probably 9-10 years ago. And since then, I've managed to put together this set of Equipo ones. The front are 15 by 9 neg 27, and the rears are a 15 by 10 neg 44. There's twin caliper set up on the rear, which uses a twin pot Nissan brake. Those wheels don't actually clear those brakes, so they need a 15 mil spacer again to clear. So that brings them out towards a neg 60. Sail and semi-slick up the front, Nankang semi on the back, 205 on the rear, 195 on the front, and I found that's a combination that works quite well for this car. They're quite beefy on the rear, but that's how we like them.
Home run, touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now, top corner talking home run, touchdown, buzzer beater.
The livery, the orange over black, simple, as basic as it can be. Well-placed stickers all around the joint. They're all just brands that I support or people that support me. And long story short, there's no other story to it. That's just exactly what it is. The inverted revive in the side of it was an afterthought because I always wanted a two-tone S13. The bonnet is a tribute to my good friend Levi Clark, who passed away midway through the year. So 324 forever. I will always run that on my car somewhere or another. So that's the outside of the car. Let's now get into the inside, the engine conversion, and all the mods that we've done from the front to the back.
Let's bring the stars in. Undefeated mode, no falling.
The engine bay, the power plant. This is where all the effort has come to life over the last year, if anyone's watched the YouTube and the 1.5 episodes I put on. The first thing we've done here is mount a Phoenix front mount intercooler. I couldn't get it to sit where I wanted it to sit because it ran into the headlights. It also made the front bar not fit all that well. So I've cut 2 rows off the front of it, replated it, plug welded it, put it all back up. I've then welded 2 tight radius 90s onto the end of it, so that way it allows me to run a one-piece intercooler pipe from the plenum all the way down and also from the turbo all the way down. We've got Wiggins clamps top and bottom, which is securing them in place. The motor I've mounted to the chassis rails, so I've also used a trailing arm bush as the engine mount. There's very little movement side to side in it. Also how I've done the gearbox crossmember limits the movement as well. So that allows me to run those Wiggins top and bottom and have a tight hole where the cooler pipe runs through the two infill panels that I've put in there as well. And it also looks $1 million. So in behind the intercooler there, we have the oil cooler. It is an RX-7 7-row style intercooler. The reason for that is the lines just look so good when they come out in unison together instead of being on the top or on the bottom of the oil cooler. I've then drawn up and CNC cut a bracket for the top of it, and also on the bottom of it, I have folded out of a 2mm aluminium plate and dimple dyed the lower support, which goes down to the rad support after that. I've actually notched about 25mm out of the lower rad support and braced it with a 5mm plate vertically all the way across it and also on the bottom of it. The reason for that is so I can actually jack the car up by the rad support and it not move the rails like they normally do on Nissan stuff. I didn't want to run the bash bar down to a jacking point how most people normally do because I wanted to make the whole front of the car very, very easy to pull apart and put back together. I also didn't want to be able to see that jacking point from the front of the car because I think the TBO style on the front bar is the best part. That's all reinforced. We can jack the car up all good now. That allows me to put an S14 Phoenix radiator up under the rad support and blend everything in super nicely. So behind the Phoenix radiator, I have BA Falcon twin thermo fans, which we have then made custom brackets which mount them and seal them to the Phoenix radiator. They work extremely well. I'm very impressed with how well that keeps the car cool. From there, out of the top water neck of the radiator, we have a one-piece pipe with two Wiggins clamps, which goes into a swirl pot onto the top water neck of the 1J. The turbo manifold is a 6-boost Pro Mod style manifold. Kyle and Denver did me a favor and welded the entire thing out until the turbo position. So I finalized the turbo position and gate position from there. Sitting on there is a Gen 1 Garrett 3076 ball bearing turbo and a 50mm Turbo Smart wastegate. Off the back of the turbo, we have a 3-inch dump pipe, stainless steel or TIG welded, which goes into a 3-inch oval tube. Reason we use ovals because we can get it up above the chassis rails. No running into the ground and stuff, so that's pretty good. Cold side, we have a mixture of things which we've had to make work. The plenum, I've had to custom build. The chamber itself, I believe, is off an XR6 turbo casting, which you can do like a DIY sort of plenum. You can see as it comes out the end there, it sweeps out, then sweeps back straight. It's actually supposed to sweep out towards the tub, and I've cut it on a 45-degree angle, rotated it 180 degrees, welded it back together, because every plenum that I've found and test fitted, the stock one was up through the cowl and through the bonnet. All the aftermarket ones that I've tried were the throttle body ended up being inside the tub. So we've had to go down the route and custom make one. The runners are actually CNC machined from a ProFlow style 1JZ plenum. We've cut the chamber off, milled it in the mill to get it dead flat. We've then taken the XR6 style chamber, cut about 1.5 inches out of the back of it, blended it back together, and then rotated the front where the throttle body goes on. We've then machined up the 4-bolt flange, which then goes to a Plasmaman 76mm throttle body. From there, it goes into the Wiggins clamp and into the cooler pipes, which we've already talked about. Another thing that we've done with the intake plenum is we've run everything underneath the bottom of it. All the vacuum ports, the accelerator cable, all the wiring attaches up underneath the bottom of it, which makes the aesthetics of the engine bay look minimal. Below the plenum, we have an LS1 alternator relocation kit, which is done by Leeson Engineering. The reason that that is on that side of the engine, one, it's relocated, gets it away from the heat source. B, is because I've put a turbo and a wastegate where the alternator needs to go. The rocker covers I have welded up, blended, taken away any ugly little nooks and crannies out of them. Hock from Hock's Mod Shop has painted them and the entire bay in Mazda Soul Red. He's also put ghost flames in the covers there. We've used a flush style banjo bolt style fitting that goes from there over to the catch can, which we've drawn up, CNC cut, laser etched and powder coated. In between the rocker covers, we have the Yaris coil pack conversion, which we've also made the bracket. We've made that so number 6 coil, instead of it being a circle that the plug goes through, it's a semicircle. So I can undo 2 bolts, pull the first 5 coils out, and then lean number 6 forward and pull it out on a bit of an angle to get to the spark plug. The reason why that's a pain is because I like to make my life a little bit difficult, and we've decided to put 5.5 cylinders behind the engine crossmember. It makes it very easy to work on. I can pull the entire front end out of the car and not have to worry about hanging the engine up or anything like that. We've done an electric steering conversion, so there's no hydraulics. Everything is as simple as it possibly can be with this car. With that also comes the complexity of trying to make the engine fit in that position. The reason that the motor went back that far is I wanted to run a rear sump instead of a front sump. No oil starvation issues. Also, I wanted to build a firewall on something. This started off as a little bit of a notch into the cowl and a little bit of a hump to get the motor back so far, and then it ended up in me cutting the entire firewall out, the entire tunnel out, the entire little cut hump out of where the exhaust normally goes through on the standard position, because on a 1J it's on this side of the car. Before this, the car had an LS1 in it. It worked very, very well and I enjoyed it quite a lot, but it got to the point where I got bored of it and I never lifted up the bonnet in the engine bay because it wasn't really much to look at. From there, I wanted a completely naked and shaved bay. If you didn't need it for the motor to run or the car to run, I didn't want it in here. Everything is smooth. It's taken quite a long time to smooth the rad support, the firewall, blend everything in, put all the swages in, work out the steering geometry. We also wanted to delete the booster on the brake setup. So inside the car, we've used a Wilwood reverse swing pedal box, which mounts the master cylinders up underneath the dash bar, deletes the booster in the engine bay and makes the rest of all this hot side just really, really smooth and blended in. Strut towers forward. We've made and fabricated these tubs and the two infill panels on each side, deleted the battery bracket and all the other little holes and things in front of that. Ended up remaking the entire panel from scratch just because it was easier, it was quicker, and it allowed me to put the two holes where the intercooler pipes were going to go in the exact position they needed to be to make it easy to fabricate and also good to look at. Suspension in the front of this car. So we have a BC red coilover with a 16 kilo spring. We have a 30mm extended cut and shut lower control arm, which has been C-notched so the knuckle can tuck right up into it. Knuckles, we're running a B knuckle, which is also a cut and shut knuckle for those that don't know. We have a kink style caster arm, which is the GK Tech flat plate style, and no sway bar in the front. The steering rack, because we've gone rear sump with the 1JZ, we have then moved the steering rack forward approximately about 50mm to give us all the clearance in the world around the bottom of the sump and also lifted it up away from the road. 1JZ details, I didn't really go into that much inside either. So it's just a stock internal 1J. We haven't done anything at all besides a major service, cam seals, all that sort of stuff.
Motherfucker, I've been mortified, fortified, fitting like a Mordecai. I ain't regular, feel like Jordan wearing 45. Traumatized, victimized, seen some of my niggas die. Knock you off a base with a bat.
All right, moving on to have a glimpse at the cockpit. What we've done is we've cut the entire gearbox tunnel out all the way to the back of where the tail shaft goes. The reason for that is that we've lifted the diff up in the cradle 25mm. And the tail shaft actually rubs on the two bolt bosses that normally hold the center bearing in. As a result, we've cut the entire top section out of the tail shaft, section of the tunnel, and then we've raised that up about 20-25mm. From there, everything forward has also been cut out to fit the gearbox going higher to get it away from the ground, and a section of the rails got cut out when we removed the hump out of the passenger side floor. Because the motor has come back so far, the gearbox mounting position has also moved back. I couldn't work out a simple way to run the exhaust through the gearbox crossmember without either the gearbox crossmember being on the ground or also the floor being too low. As a compromise, what we've done is I've deleted the gearbox mounting out of the bottom of the car altogether and remade it. What we've ended up doing is putting a plate on the bottom of the driver's side floor. It also picks up the new seat rails that we've made, which are 25x50 box section RHS welded to the floor and in some sections recessed through the floor. That gets the seats super low. Brett gave me the idea to also move the seat rails outside of the seat, flip the brackets and then run the seat in the middle all the way down. That got me another 20mm lower in the seat as well because I am quite tall. Head clearance has always been an issue in this car, which is another reason why we wanted to cut the floor out and lower everything down. On the side of the gearbox tunnel there, we've also fabricated and CNC cut a hydraulic handbrake bracket. Brett helped me out because I started running out of time, and he's machined up the clevis that goes into the carbon fiber handle. He also gave me the idea for that. It works quite well on Wilwood 7/8 size master cylinders. The steering column is a Carmack Revive fully electric motor which actually goes inside the column, so there's no hydraulics. From there, we're going into a 6-point roll cage with A-pillar gussets dimple dyed. From there, we've mounted the Wilwood reverse swing pedal box off the front of the dash bar. So we've actually drawn up, bent and welded to the firewall, the top of the cowl, and also to the dash bar to support the brakes. I've got my classic little dildo gear knob there, which I've run in all of my track cars. It used to be yay long, 78 foot, and I keep snapping it. So gluing it back together and putting it down, it's still got a bit of life left in it. Underneath that, we have a R150 gearbox with a OS Geiken twin plate clutch, single piece tail shaft, which explains why we've raised the tunnel in the back of it. Gearbox tunnel's been raised up about 1.5 inches to 2 inches to get the gearbox as high as possible. That's the reason why the standard plenum wouldn't work on this car and it went through the bonnet. The engine's been lifted up to get the sump and everything above the rails. It's about 10 mil above. The gearbox is also above the rails, and so is the full exhaust system. Onto the complicated side of the car. We have all of the electrics, which my good friend Stephen Brugmans has wired the entire car from front to back. It has a standalone body loom in it. It also has a little CAN controller there, which we've been working on. I can control from my phone. So I can control the engine, the body loom, the lights, everything off my phone, off a little Bluetooth app. Everything runs through the center of the car on a rail. We've done that on all of our cars because the simplicity of it. It runs the fuel lines, the looms, anything that needs to run from the front of the car to the back, the brake lines, all that sort of stuff. Keeps it all in one location, keeps the floors nice and clean. ECU and engine management. We have a Link Storm X controlling everything. As I said before, my good friend Steve has wired the entire car front to back. We've made this little display panel which has all the messy wiring hidden in behind it and everything neat and tidy here in the front. I'm not quite finished with this yet. I wanted to put an LED display in it so over night time it looks pretty cool. I also need to make a little bit of a kick panel because when you have passengers in the car, I realise they tend to put their feet forward. Even though I've mounted the seat so far back, it's still a risk that someone's going to boot the crap out of it. So I need to fix that as well. The overall appearance of it, I'm very happy with it. So that's the engine management side of things. Fuel system, standard S13 tank with an in-tank 460 Warbro pump. It then goes into 2 bulkheads which runs 2 Teflon braided lines all the way up through the car on that rail, through 2 more bulkheads at the front of the firewall which go underneath the plenum up to the Turbo Smart fuel reg. From there into the fuel rail, which then has ID 1000cc injectors. On the dyno, the car made 506 horsepower at the wheels. Since then, we've turned it down. It's currently sitting at about 460, 450-ish horsepower, which is a pretty good figure for our tyre and wheel combo that we have on it, because we can't have too much power, otherwise we'll be just overspinning the wheels.
Came through dripping Aquafina, I'm sipping 15, kept a weapon on me. Blow make digits, I'm on my business, stack chicken like what it's gonna be.
Rightio. We've gone over everything on the car, from the livery to the fabrication to the engine choice to everything that's happening inside of it. Since we've finished the car, we've done 2 events. One was Steez in the Trees, which was a 2-day event. Testing of the car, straight after the dyno, it went onto the trailer. Barely made it off the trailer because as I reversed the car off the trailer at Steez in the Trees, the balancer decided to stay on the trailer. So 1J balancer things, they decide to come apart. The boss will stay on the crank. The outside decides to stay on the trailer. We put another standard one on there, so I really should pull my finger out and replace that with an aftermarket one. But we managed to get that over. We drove the car into town, into Stanthorpe, which is pretty cool. We got to actually see if the brakes had worked, the clutch, all of that sort of thing after being such an extensive build. We then drove it back to the track and then did 2 days of drifting where myself and Steve drove the car, and touch wood, we didn't have any faults with the car. It did everything that I asked it to do. The 1J is very well balanced. I think it works better being further back, and I can actually feel the front not being front end heavy. thing I'd love to do with this car is actually put it on a set of scales and see what the weight distribution is. I'm pretty confident it would be very close to 50-50, just feeling how light the front end feels compared to having the LS in it. If you were to dive heavily onto the brakes, it doesn't do that lean forward, weight transfer, push the front out of the way sort of thing. Like you can left foot brake this thing around a corner and the car will actually go backwards, not forwards. It doesn't dip down as much as what it used to do. In terms of transferring when you're on the loud pedal in a straight line, you can feel every single ounce of it go to the back and push into the bitumen. I think it's made quite a big difference putting the motor where it is, and I'm very, very keen to go and do some grip days with it and actually see what sort of times we can do with the car and see if we can make it grippy in all aspects of motorsport. We've also done Christmas Bash in December where I got to drive with a whole bunch of my mates and actually do a bit of testing in terms of tandems and stuff like that, following Paulie around, a few of the other boys, getting to hit turn 1 and turn 2 at Queensland Raceway, which is, you know, top of 4th gear into 5th gear. The car felt a little bit too well balanced towards the rear. I couldn't put front end grip down. So now I'm thinking that I might add a sway bar into the front of it, which I took out when the LS was in there because it felt a bit front end heavy and I wanted to transfer the weight to the back more. There's a few things in testing that we're going to do in the future and I'm very excited to see how that goes, and when we do that we'll put some videos up and keep everyone in tune with how it is. There's a few little things left to finish the car to get it to the point where I'll be happy with it. One of those is fit an S15 dash into it, which I've already got. I've cut it up and I've made it fit. I just need to install it. We left it out for testing purposes in case we need to default find anything inside the car. Touch wood, we haven't had to do that so far, so we might fit that pretty soon. The LED panel for the ECU, I'm going to put an acrylic clear guard over that and put some lights in it so it is a display piece, as well as the footwell. I'll make some dimple dye or some swage little kick panels so no one can kick that, and also stop me wrecking the paint on the inside of the car as well. Eventually I'll repaint the whole inside of the car, maybe add like a metallic silver or something like that, but for now I just want to enjoy it and do some driving, so that's what we're going to do. If you like this video and you want to see more content on this car or fabrication stuff, anything that I get up to, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Why do they doubt the kid?